Hi guys, Duke. I'm of course about to get in Doctor Who week going, but here's the thing: we gotta do Trial of a Time Lord, and I've realized one important fact that basically forces me to do what I'm about to do right now. So, please forgive this little thing here, but I just need to do this now, and I need to make it very clear. Uh, so I'm going to need the picture of Nicola Bryant in a bikini I constantly keep using as an in-joke. There you are. You look good as always. Listen, picture. I've made a grave discovery about Perry in these stories, or at least the parts of this she appears in, and I'll explain what I mean as the reviews go on. She, shockingly enough, wears clothes in this. They have her pretty much covered up. I dare say it. They actually had enough in their mind to this is going to be a shocker to you, I know. Have her act more like an adult than a bratty teenage girl, and dress more conservatively. So, as far as I can tell, there's no use for you in this. Oh, don't look at me like, oh wait, you're a still picture. You have no choice. So, as much as you bring joy to me and a lot of other people, particularly the straight male demographic, particularly, I haven't gauged anyone else. I'm gonna have to call you. I'm gonna have to make you set this out, and you'll. Hey! If you feel bad, I'll definitely bring you up in the next Doctor Who week. I mean, you're in a lot of the audio dramas, and it's audio, so we could just assume that Perry's wearing two saltines and some string, and that we can make our imagination go wild. But until then, I have no real use for you unless I find something. So, bye. Well, now that pointless bullcrap's over, let's get on to the review. The mysterious planet has the hallmarks of something. And I say that because the title is a very generic kind of sci-fi title. But you know what? For Doctor Who, especially at this time, I'm ready for anything. We also see a few interesting points. We see that this was the last full Robert Holmes penned script, and we'll explain why I said full later in these series of reviews. Now that's a big thing, well, it should be considered a big thing. Robert Holmes, I still stand by, is and will always be one of the greatest writers the series ever had. The man knew how to write comedy, write characters, come up with brilliant stories. For the most part, when he was on fire, knew how to use historical settings. Was kind of the front, like the beginning of using violence a little more to show, how threatening something could be, not for the sake of violence, but to show that there's consequences, and to show that it wasn't just a kid show, it was something that could be a little bit more intense. Not at all taking it away from children, but making it work so it's scarier for an older audience. And this, in subtle ways, kind of fits that theme, because we have an old woman with a machine gun. Yeah, that's kind of an interestingly awesome image. Grannies with guns. Someone probably already registered that domain name. Anyway, now, there's two things to look at here. The story that takes place on the quote-unquote mysterious planet, and the actual trial stuff. The thing with the trial stuff here is a notable complaint people have had with the trial portions in particular is they don't entirely mesh with the overall story. It's very much like the story goes, and then we have to cut and have the Doctor react to what the hell happened on from what they're watching. Again, the screaming kind of piece here the big joke about this thing is you're spending 14 episodes watching the Doctor. Well, you're spending most of, let's just say 12 episodes having the Doctor watch Doctor Who. And that is not an incredibly exciting prospect on its own, because it just sounds like an unintentional joke, and it kind of is. I will say this: the trial stuff's well written, and the stuff. Basically, I'm going to separate this: the trial stuff and the quote-unquote story stuff is the stuff that's happening on the planet that they're seeing, and they're judging and making their calls for the trial. Hopefully that won't get confusing, but that's kind of what I'm going to have to go with here. It opens up with the trial stuff, with them summoning the Doctor, having him, of course, in his traditional robe, in his traditionally goofy outfit, and even more hair, because the producer did not want him to cut his hair. Why, I have no idea, but hey, he made the call. They're basically telling him that he's broken the first rule of the Prime Directive. I mean, the first rule of time. And that's kind of the crux. Meddling with time, endangering events, all that. Basically, stuff that you could probably back up if you're cynical, but the Doctor's here to basically, fight the trial. And again, to reinforce the incredibly terrible in-joke that the show was on trial by the BBC itself. So, the story's somewhat... The story on the planet is very, very back to basics Doctor Who. After, and again, I haven't seen all the previous season, but I'm going to say this. Basically, Twin Dilemma all the way up, because I've seen Revelation of the Daleks now. I've seen Revelation of the Daleks, Vengeance on Varos, of course. I saw the Two Doctors, and I want to say, I don't know if there's another one. I have not. Here's the thing I have to say with those is they were trying very hard to, at least in my opinion, be different. Mostly try and push how dark this Doctor is. And it doesn't do a good job at that at all. Here, they've kind of balanced it out. Colin is not... I don't know, he's not trying to play the dark, mysterious Doctor. He's still kind of have ounces of stubbornness to him, but I think that's all part of his look. I think that helps him. That's the calling card of him. He's much more, stubborn, but he's definitely grown on Perry. One thing I will admit here, because again, there was an 18-month hiatus. The Perry and the Doctor, the respective actors, somehow managed to basically show that stuff happened off screen, that they kind of went through character growth off screen. Perry, again, appears much more adult, wears actual clothes. Not to mention, the actress is actually, in her body language and posture, is acting more mature, which is a step up. See, you can definitely tell that Nicola Bryant was actually, acting, probably, getting practice, getting doing stuff, getting any kind of experience. Colin Baker, from the looks of it, was eating pie, because he looks at least 20 pounds heavier than he was at the end of Revelation. He wasn't always the thinnest Doctor to begin with, but again, it does show that he gained a little weight, and it kind of reinforced some really mean jokes on him. But the thing is, again, you could tell that in that long break, which, of course, novels and Big Finish itself have done their best to kind of, tell stories, take full advantage of that part in time. The same deal with Mel and all that. But again, we will get there. And sorry, I'm still kind of coughing. see them kind of react to this planet. And the supporting cast for the trial stuff, and they're in the entire trial stuff, so they're basically the main cast along with them. We have the Inquisitor, who is this lady in the fancy hat, who's basically playing stern Time Lord, not obviously playing the bad guy because she's wearing all white like an angel, as opposed to the Valyard, who A, has an evil sounding name, and B, looks like he has to shave every 5 minutes, otherwise his mustache will grow and he has an uncontrollable urge to twist it. But I'll admit this, he's playing very strongly. He's not at all twisting his mustaches. He's, if anything, the writers and him are doing their best to just make him seem more like a somewhat dickish Time Lord instead of the quote-unquote bad guy. But he's basically treated as the bad guy. I'm not going to completely spoil, what he really is until we get to the ultimate foe, for those who don't know, but I'm sorry, it's safe to say that this guy is not the, safest cat around. But the thing is, the trial stuff is, between the three actors. The Doctor having to bounce, not to mention getting some really good jokes in, acting very, pretty like his own Doctor. I especially love the jokes where he calls the Valyard stuff like scrapyard and boatyard and essentially just kind of ridiculing his name. That's something that any Doctor would do, but this one would do in a heartbeat, and I love that. And that's just from his previous stories alone. That's not knowing what they would do with him in the future. And as for the rest of the cast in the full story, we have these two lovable killers. Let's see, Sabalon Glitz, who is amazing, and I can't fully remember his sidekick's name. It's not that the actor was bad, it's just that compared to Glitz, he's kind of the unforgettable one, because Glitz steals the show. He's one of those few characters where he's basically not at all sweating the fact that he's going to kill people, but has a great smile about it, and you just can't help but fall for that charm. He's Tony Selby is having a hell of a time with this actor. He's slimy, skeezy, practically the bad guy, but the writing gives him an edge, and the performance from the actor just makes him perfect and watchable every time. I'm very happy this actor would eventually come back in a story we are covering this week called Dragonfire, and I'm glad that he made that somewhat of an impact in that way. And plus, I love the man interacting with Perry, because Perry's very innocent, and this man's probably committed at least half of the somewhat very common sins on a regular basis, or at least before he got there, or maybe even had breakfast. And pretty much anytime he's there, I'm always watching. The Doctor. It's interesting to get along with him, because at his core, the Doctor is again a very noble character, interacting with Glitz, anything but noble. And when he deals with the Queen Lady with the machine gun, again, we have him trying to act sly and get his way out of it, especially since his big mission is to destroy this black light converter that they treat like a totem, which leads to which is used to power this robot who's treated like a god, called Drafro. Drafro himself, I like his design. Yes, it's insanely obvious that the thing cannot move an ounce. The arms can have very limited movement and all that, but I don't know why, but I really love the look of his design. It's just kind of fun and looks, very sci-fi. I know there are people who probably don't like the design of that whatsoever. You're free to believe what you want to believe. But I liked him. He was just a crazy robot who wanted power and all that. As like a character, left no impact. But it was a decent design. It's kind of it. Now, the story itself, again, is very basic. The Doctor finds himself on this strange planet, and there's a secret to it. And the whole story is him trying to figure it out, try and stop the robot. But one thing I want to bring up is the fact that, now, the opening scene that introduces all this stuff, that introduces the, the station where they're holding the trial, it is straight up beautiful to look at. It was the most expensive shot that at the time they'd ever paid for something like that, and that shows. It looks great today, and it is one of those many cases for where you kind of feel bad that CGI is totally irrelevant nowadays. CGI is the king, and practical effects are totally irrelevant. Totally irrelevant. And it just makes you feel kind of bad, because they don't do these anymore. They don't use stop-motion models like this. Another notable thing to bring up is the fact that this is when the series went back to the 25-minute format. The thing I think went to that was the original format, if you aren't entirely aware, was because of the success the season before season 22. They did an experiment because they didn't want to lose airtime for Doctor Who around that time, so instead of having to rearrange something, they edited together a 4-part story into 2 45-minute parts, and the ratings for it were pretty good, so they decided to do that for a whole season. And I'm still not a huge fan of it, only because it seemed like they were still writing it in 25-minute parts and edited together for 45. And again, that may be because eventually they'd edit these for the PBS airings. They edited for 25 minutes still, so I'm guessing maybe it was a mandate. But I will say this: it works insanely better. The pacing's better, and it's just good to see that, because especially with an experience I had earlier today with a certain audio drama that may or may not be covered, I'm still making that big decision. I was definitely could tell when I'm at the teaser and was confused that it didn't go to the theme music and go to the next episode. That's the thing. The pacing's a little screwed off, and you're trained with the classic series. Somehow the teaser is supposed to come soon. Maybe you're looking at the clock, and apparently I'm getting a text message. Woo! And crap, I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I just think again, it helps the pacing, and they move quicker. It seemed like around this time, because the beginning of the show admittedly is very slow, very slowly paced. Here, the serialized parts, usually, if it was done well, a lot of stuff happened in 25 minutes, and it just kind of went at a nice pace. And I think that's what kind of helps this story, because it makes it feel like no matter what's happening, the story's moving. It's doing something that's keeping your attention. What else? Is there anything else that's worth noting? I am trying my best to remember more details about the plot. What we find out why this planet's like this, because you think it's another planet, but it's apparently somehow a skewed version of Earth. At least that's what I'm remembering, and it eventually will. Was it revealed here? No, I think it'll be revealed later, but it is basically brought up that the Time Lords have something to do with this, and also they show, because the way we're viewing this is through the TARDIS Matrix, And a detail worth bringing up is parts of it are edited, and you're kind of wondering why. They're kind of leading hints that make this at least feel like it is a long story instead of a bunch of things that are kind of tangentially turning into a story. But yeah, I liked this because it was more or less back to basics for Doctor Who. It wasn't trying to be insanely different like the previous season. Colin's on fire, both in the planet stuff and definitely in the trial stuff. The trial stuff just doesn't entirely seem to gel. It's also worth noting that, again, and I'll make a stronger point of this in the next review, for the next trial review, but they're watching this story in the past. If you don't understand why I'm bringing that up, I'll explain it in the next video, and in all the videos as a whole. But I think it's a very good start to the whole thing. There's a couple weak actors here and there. Honestly, I didn't bother bringing them up because they're not really big characters, but they're these two annoying assistants that the robot has who constantly talk to each other and speak in this weird, like, we should totally do that, yes, we should. Or, they basically reminded me of the twins from the Twin Dilemma if they grew up and still had the lack of acting skill. And anything I need to add? Probably not. Oh, Dibber. Dibber was Glitz's sidekick. He was a good actor. Definitely played the kind of straight to the more eccentric Glitz. Like, it's obvious. Like, I didn't get the same amount of energy from him, but he got along. Basically, if let's say Glitz is the more eccentric one in the partnership, and he's the cold one that kind of, stands there cold, straight faced, and just kind of makes quiet jokes at him, and kind of shows how slightly off Glitz honestly is, but still fun. You definitely bought that these two knew each other for a while too. I don't know how. Writing kind of helped it, but I think the actors definitely had a connection in a weird way too. But yeah, all in all, good start. Fairly good performances from the leads and the majority of the more major supporting cast. Good start to the trial.